All right, just making sure my audio's set up and good to go. All right, cool. So what I plan on doing right now is taking a look at this project CAP, which I had no idea about, and I don't even know how I stumbled upon it. I think a few days ago, and it looks really cool. So the biggest thing that I actually wanted to look at was how it, from an API standpoint, use the Outbox pattern. And really the gist of what I was after here is how that you can basically have your data store, which it supports many. Let's see. I'll show this diagram in a second. It supports SQL Server, MySQL, Postgres, Mongo, maybe more, who knows. But the idea being is that if you want to publish an event to some message broker, like I think it's like Kafka, RabbitMQ, Azure Service Bus, that generally you don't want, like if you're, say you have a transaction to your relational database where you're actually storing your data, and then you want to save that transaction, and then you want to emit an event to say RabbitMQ, or that's what I'll use in my example right now. So say, for example, I want to commit my transaction to MySQL to save my data, whatever happened, whatever action was taken, and then I need to emit an event. The problem here being is that these are two separate things, and you want them to be atomic so that you can't save your data to your relational database, MySQL, without possibly also emitting the event to RabbitMQ. Let's say RabbitMQ is down for whatever reason, or when you try to send that message to RabbitMQ, it fails. Well, you've saved your data, but you haven't emitted the event. And that is no good. So the idea with the Outbox pattern here is what your service is actually going to do is save data and the event to your relational database. And then what CAP's going to do is look at that database for a particular table. So when your data gets saved, your event is also going to get saved to a particular table in your database, a part of the same transaction. And what CAP's going to do is then look at that table, say, okay, there's a message here that I need to send to whatever my message queue is. Let's say it's Rabbit. And then once it does that, then it marks or deletes or whatever it does to the local database saying, okay, that message has been sent out. Now, the key thing to understand, I guess, about this is that the consumers of your events, there's no guarantees that they won't receive duplicates. And the reason that is because when CAP then has to send the message to RabbitMQ, this is the part that's going to not be atomic, is removing that record from your database. So let's say it submits it to Rabbit, but then something fails trying to delete that message. Well, at some point it's going to resend that message and try to delete it. So receivers of those messages need to handle that you could get basically that same message more than once, which is pretty, if you're doing any of this type of work, that is, you'd probably be pretty aware of this, but just for those interested, I'm just explaining why you want to use something like CAP, which I thought was really cool, and I want to see how it works, since I was kind of working on my little, I don't know, it's just like makeshift exercise with my project called Luigi, this is what I was about to implement next. So I just wanted to, I'm not really going to dig into the how it does it. I just want to see from an API way, from the API service, how you actually use it. So the first thing I'm going to do is, let's do, actually I can just do it from Writer. Let's open up a new version of Writer. So I'm going to create a new kind of web project. And I have looked at basically this page, just kind of quickly last night. So where the heck did Ryder go? Let me move this over to my other screen so you can see it. So I'll create a new project. New window. There we go. All right, let's make this huge so it's actually visible. I think I was making this like 26 maybe. Every time I do this, I put in a different font size. That did not work, obviously. 26. There we go. All right. So let's add some stuff to this thing. Let's go back here. Let's go over to NuGet. Cap. I don't know if it's gonna come up first. Okay, so this is the latest version. Let's give that a go. So, oops. Item group. So we're gonna add cap. And let's take a look at the docs a little bit more. So like I said, you're gonna use your relational database, which is gonna be your data store. So in this case, I'm actually gonna use MySQL since I'm fairly certain I know I already have a Docker image or container already running. So we'll use that one. And then for our message queue, I'm gonna use RabbitMQ. So this one. All right. So we got those 3 packages. And I know the other cool thing that I noticed was there was a dashboard which looked, yeah, so this dashboard. So what package is that a part of? So this is cool. It just basically shows you public messages, received, receivers, number of servers that you have connected. So what's the dashboard? I don't know where it's at, what package it is. Let's see. Cap dashboard. All right, cool. Hide that. All right, Windows Defender. Yes, let's fix that. All right, cool. So the next piece of the puzzle here is going to be, like it showed in the startup, is what we're gonna have to put in here. So let's look at the docs here. Subscribing, let's see, okay, config. So if you're using EF Entity Framework, you can add your context, so it can hook in there. I'm not going to do all that just for this demo. What I will do though is we're going to use MySQL and then we're going to use a RabbitMQ. All right, so in the configure services, we're going to have to do this. So configure services, wherever I was at, here we go. All right, so add cap. Let's call some options. So we got options.mysql, and this is going to be the connection string, which I don't have running yet, but I'll do that. So this will just be server localhost. Can't remember, is it like UID? UID equals root. We'll do password. DWD equals root, and we'll make a database called demo. That's good. And then options.use RabbitMQ. And this is going to be localhost. So I need MySQL, I need RabbitMQ running. So let's see here. All right, let's make this bigger. I don't think I have anything running. MySQL, you gotta give it default password. Let's map 3306, which is the default port. And I'm pretty sure I have 8.0 downloaded. Oops, if I could type it right. All right, so we're running MySQL. Run RabbitMQ. This is from their Docker, by the way. I'm looking at another screen. What's the default port? 5672. And RabbitMQ3. All right, cool. All right, so we should have those both running. I do need to create a database, which I just opened Workbench. I don't think I can zoom this, nor do you care. So I'm just going to create a demo database. All right, that's fine. All right, so I have this demo database set up with MySQL, which I just connected to. RabbitMQ is running. I need to hook up the dashboard as well, so I'm gonna guess this is in here. Use dashboard. That's probably other options, whatever. And I can only imagine in here, I'm gonna also have to do dashboard. So in the configure, I gotta add, I'm gonna assume this is for the route for it to hook up a part of the request to steal the request, so I can actually see the dashboard and add the routing to it. So you think this would be maybe in here now. Huh. All right, let's see what else we got. So RabbitMQ, MySQL. Now we can get into publishing. So their example is you are creating a connection, you're creating your transaction in MySQL, where this is clearly an extension method, a part of CAP, that probably creates the transaction, and then so it can reference it. So then you have to give it the ICAP publisher, a part of that transaction. And this auto commit true, which is, I think, very likely since it's just going to do it on dispose if it hasn't been committed yet. And then so here is where you would have your, your SQL statements to MySQL to do whatever you need it to do. And then subsequently from that, you would publish your event and then commit the transaction. And then this piece and what your business logic is that's hitting the database are a part of the same transaction. And then, like I said, at that point, CAP will then pull some record out of your database that it maintains. There's probably some table, I'll look, that it maintains the events that you're publishing, and then marks them. It probably either deletes them or marks them as published, but we'll see how that works here in a second. So let's create something like this. Let's just do it here. Let's already have a controller. Let's do it right in the info. So ICAP publisher. Oh, actually, I don't want it there. Put it up here. I despise injecting in controller actions. So actually, before we even do any of this, we got to do a using. Oops. So let's do connection equals new MySQL connection. Oh crap, I gotta do connection string again. All right, normally this would be in a config, but for the sake of sanity, testing this out. All right, so we have our connection. Then we would do, what did it show? A transaction. Connection.begin transaction. Yeah, so the cat publisher and then auto commit. That auto commit is interesting. So we got cat publisher. I'm not even going to do the auto commit because I want to do it. So I'll make this async. So just like their example, at this point you would be doing some, you know what I mean, create command, or same thing if you're using EF. You would just be beginning the transaction and then doing your EF queries in here. But I'm not going to do anything because I don't have any tables. But I will now do the cat publisher. And let's do publish async. So the first parameter here is the name, I believe. So this is going to be the name of the event. So let's call this hello world. And then the object that we want to send. So let's just make it a string, I guess. And then the third one could be the callback subscriber name. Not even sure what that is, but I know we don't need it yet. All right, so I'm gonna publish an event or a message named hello world, and I'm just gonna pass it in a string. So that's step one. Now step two to this would be some receiver. So let's do hello world receiver. And how exactly do we do that? So subscribing. So subscribing is using this attribute, cap subscribe, and then this is going to be the name of that event, which mine was hello world. And then subsequently, the parameters for those are going to be whatever the, I'm going to assume it takes just one single object. In my case, it's going to be a string, but it could be an object or a date time like this. So let's steal that. All right, so let's do public void. I don't know, I usually call stuff handle, so string, I'll just call it value. Add this on. So this thing was called hello world was our name. And then, so what's interesting about this attribute style versus say something like it being defined and figured out, I'm curious of why the attributes versus interfaces like, I mean, message handler that you then have to implement. And then it being like a standardized type here. That would be the object itself that represents the command or the event. This is I'm curious of this because I'm generally not a fan of attributes, so I'm just curious why maybe they did it that way or what the pros or cons of that are. So let's jump over here. Let's grab a logger. And then let's just log it. Logger.log. Debug. Let's just do value. Let's break here so I can see it. So I'm for sure gonna have to register this. So our services add All right, I don't know if I'm missing anything here. Who knows? Let's give it a shot. I have no idea if I'm missing something. Well, it builds. That's good news. It's gonna roll. There we go. Okay, so I just for sure published a message when I was doing this. So that's interesting. How do we get to the dashboard? Dashboard. Oh, there it was. That was the package we already added. /cap. Okay, so here's our dashboard, and we see that we have published 4 messages. This was my hello world message. So we got some headers it adds, and then our value. So that's neat. That's cool. That's cool. We can see failed messages. So I don't have any subscribers. Why is that? I did something wrong here. So I added it. What did we miss? Let's go back to this thing. So subscribing to Hello World. That was our message. Did I spell it right? Yeah. What did I miss? What did I miss? So I should pick this up, I would think. Get any errors or anything? Nope. Just not finding our handler. Why is that? Let's go back in here. Oops. So if I go back to here, I should see this increment. 5, 6. All right, so the publish is for sure working. Let's figure out why it is not registering. Cap subscribe. Look at the examples again. Missed something. Groups. This is why. All right, so actually I was kind of onto something there. So I need to have the receiver also implement the iCap subscribe. So this is what I was referring to. I'm surprised this isn't like an iCap subscribe of T. And T would be the object, but the reason, now I get it, the reason why I can't do this is because it's not driven by types, it's driven by strings. So it absolutely needs this way because there is no T. So that makes sense why it's an attribute now. All right, so let's rerun this now. So basically I haven't, I have a pile now of messages out here, 6 of them, that have not at all been published. So there we go. So there's our subscriber. This is a group, which I can probably adjust. And here's our method. That was the message that it handles. So, oh, I didn't have it in here. Let me break on this. So it probably processed it. That's received. Let's re-enqueue these. See if we break. We do. Hello world, this is code opinion. Cool. Nice. So that's actually pretty painless. So let's get rid of this breakpoint. And I'm going to run all of them. Okay, so these are all succeeded. So the last thing I guess I have in this mix that I'm curious of is failed jobs. I guess it's around failed jobs, retries, like retries with backoffs. If any of that's in here, if that's left to your own. I mean, there's probably, I'm looking at one page here, so there's probably more to this. So this is the groupings. So subscription groups are similar to the consumer groups in Kafka. It's same as a broadcast mode in the message queue, which is used to process the same message between multiple different microservices. Yeah, so you basically can have multiple groups like each group is a competing consumer, meaning that you could have multiple processes belong to the same group, but only one will actually process a message. But if you have multiple groups, each one within it, like in this case, they're processing the same they'll get the same event basically, and they'll process them independently. So it's not like first one wins in this particular case. If you wanted to have different groups process that message that were living, I guess probably separately. So that's interesting with groups. That makes sense. But anyways, let's. I'm just curious about failures. So let's throw something in here. Let's just throw. This one happens to see if it just straight fails, what the scenario is there. So the question I'm getting from Kasem, if I'm pronouncing your name right, is, are you sure the receiver will work as a service and not as a Windows service or console app? Well, I was just running this. I'm just running a web app. So to me, it would be pretty much anywhere. So as long as you are running, like if you're running a hosted service, like the new ASP.NET like Core is originally how it came out with the generic host, you can just run a console app. You can run that console app as a Windows service. But in this particular case, I'm not even doing either. I'm just running in a web app. So it means that as long as your app has in its startup, and again, the startup isn't necessarily for web apps. Like again, you can use this with a generic host. As long as you are doing stuff like this in particular, this is pretty much, I believe, what's creating the kind of all the work that's going to be. I don't know how it does it internally. If it's I'm going to assume it's. I mean, for the MySQL stuff, it's definitely just using the transaction that you pass to it. It's kind of wrapping it up, but I don't know if it pulls MySQL constantly to see what's in that. Actually, you know what I wanted to see, which was what it actually creates in MySQL. I can't blow this up, but there is a, I guess I can. So there is a cap published and a cap received. So these are the two tables it created, a part of the database. So I don't know how it's handling these and when it's handling these in terms of after it's published. I don't know if it tries to do it a part of the transaction. But if something fails, is which I want to try right now, is what actually happens. So, so I'm in here. I ran this. Let's see if, okay, so we got failed. So it's just straight failures. Okay, so it is doing retries. That's cool. So there's definitely ways that it's dealing with retries and probably backoffs of some sort, so you can re-execute these. This whole dashboard thing is like, I think that normal Bootstrap one, but this feels like Hangfire. So that's cool. I'm curious of what you can configure, how you configure retries I'm gonna assume it is via different attributes here. I don't know what else was in that. It was just the group. I don't know if there's anything else in here. I'll have to look more at the docs to see if there's any more. It didn't mention on the main page if there's anything to do with retries, but. And then servers, that page is bombing, I don't know why. But as you probably could expect, the idea behind this, cap.node, that may be a bug, I don't know, if you're only running one node. Anyways, is that, yeah, if you had multiple services, so I've used Mass Transit, this is a good one to test next. Yeah, I think so. I think it's pretty neat. Like Mass Transit and probably EventBus or Rebus. I haven't used much of I know of Rebus, and even pretty much anything to some degree. There's a lot in to me, like this is the basics of it, but that's where I was curious with the retries, how you handle those, because that's in like backoffs, and those are the ones that are kind of the most, I wouldn't say most important things, but once you get over kind of this superficial stuff of, okay, you can have this all a part of one transaction, and it's pushing it, I mean, you're saving your transaction MySQL, and then it's emitting that event out to RabbitMQ, how it handles exceptions, retries, just all that configuration is what I'm interested per handler, as well as how, if there's any way to intervene or interject, I guess, when certain exceptions happen. Like maybe if a particular, for example, say this handle method has, I don't know, you throw a particular exception that is deliberate that you don't want to retry on. Like, how do you configure that? Because you don't want it to succeed. So, or succeed in the normal way that it's thinking and just passing it all the way through. So that'd be my next piece, but this looks pretty cool. I don't know how long this project's been going for. So if people are watching this after the fact and know more about CAP, actually, let's look at the version history. So 6 months, well, at least for 3. So who knows before that? Maybe I go back to the GitHub. Let's see here. Well, there's a pile of commits, so let's go back to, I want to go back to releases actually. I think this is fairly old. 2008, so it's a couple, I mean, we're in June now, 2020, amazingly. So this is, yeah, this is not new. Which kind of bums me out that I'm just finding out about this. And it doesn't actually have a ton of downloads. So how many people know about this, I do not know, but I think it's pretty cool. Can we define workflow like Saga patterns in this? I don't see why not. So I guess it depends on what your definition, if we're using the same definition for Saga or Process Manager. So I guess it depends if you want to have that thing maintain state, like if there's state associated to it, if that's what you mean. Or if it's just going to be, because really there'd be nothing stopping you from having like this particular receiver subscribe to different events and then subsequently make, you know what I mean, it's particular actions based off those events. It's just the question I guess then becomes, is Saga Process Manager, is there state involved? Like, does this thing have to maintain a particular state, the actual handler itself, to keep track of when certain things happen? I don't know about that, if it allows that or not, or if it does that. I'd be curious to look up in here if it does anything. Like I said, I'm completely new to this one too, so it didn't have much here other than that. there's more samples though. In memory, console app. Oh, cool. Well, it probably would have helped if I would have started here, maybe. Okay, sagas. To do. Okay, so stateful services. So they are mentioning state. So that would be interesting. So serializers, idempotence, this is what I was referring to earlier at the very beginning of the conversation, which is the delivery guarantees. It's going to be at least once. So that receivers, like whoever's receiving messages, may get them more than once. Hence why you could probably use the message ID that's in the header, because this will be the same message ID over and over if you're processing the same message. So you would use that for idempotence. Where was I at? I lost my page. Yeah, at least once. So I guess for the Saga portion, I don't know if this is actually implemented or maybe just the docs aren't there. I don't know. So RouteMQ, Kafka, Azure Service Bus, and memory. I already mentioned all the persistence, the dashboards, diagnostics. All right, so you can just hook into various events for when persisted, after, when it's sent to the message queue. So all that good stuff. Retries. Okay, so here's my answer. Retry 3 times for the first time. Retry every minute after 4 minutes plus 1 retries. So after 50, it starts retrying. You can adjust the number of default retries by setting the failed retry count in cap options. That sounds like that was in the configure services, though. Yeah, so he's the point of the Saga is orchestrating managing transactions for multiple microservices. Yeah, unfortunately, blank page about Sagas. That may be worthwhile digging in to see if there's stuff there. So expires at serialization. So this, I'm assuming how it's serializing that record in the database. So you can have your own serializer. So you can add your own serializer for your message. Interesting to know. Where else was I at? Configuration. I think I've seen all that. Here. Yeah, so it looks like the retries per, like, globally, which is a little bit unfortunate. Yeah, too bad you can't do it per. All right, well, yeah, I got what I wanted out of this. Hopefully, if you're watching this, you did too. Just get a little bit primer over how this works. I think it's pretty neat so far. I don't think it's super. I shouldn't say it's elaborate enough for what it actually has to do. So, and it has a bunch of transports, a bunch of persistence already, which I guess are probably the most common things people would be using. That's what the target here is, really. The only thing, I guess, would be if it had anything to do with SQS and AWS, which it does not. So that might be interesting to look at how these are implemented and how it would be implemented with SQS. So yeah, cool. If you're watching this after the fact, after this live stream, let me know in the comments what you think, if you've seen CAP before. This live stream, I've kind of been switching back before live stream and just kind of edited, recorded videos, the last 2 I've done. So if you prefer one or the other, let me know. This one's more freeform because I'm just obviously looking at it more for the first time, although I did take a kind of initial scan at the page. So appreciate you watching. Like I said, let me know your comments in the comments on YouTube. Thanks.